Welcome back, everyone. We are live for another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to first throw it off to who I forgot to give a chance to sign off last week, the American one. How you doing, bud?
Hello, Jack. Hello, panel. Hello, everyone in chat. Happy Sunday. I'm the American One on YouTube and the American One underscore with underscore Keens on the IG. And yeah, I'm glad to be here.
We're happy to have you as always, and I want to remind the people that are already here to click on over to the live chat. It looks like I didn't have to send a message. Smart Poker beat me to it. So the chat is active and going on the YouTube. Kate Armstrong is here as well. Next, I want to give a chance to Dr. MJ Coco to introduce himself.
Hey, Dr. MJ Coco from CocoForCannabis.com. I'm excited to be with you. I'm glad everybody got here. Well, most of us got here on time for the time change. I want to tell everybody about the Spring Autoflower Challenge coming up, and we just sort of announcing that this week. And we also have a strain review giveaway that everybody can check out at CocoForCannabis.com.
Great stuff, Doc. Hey, I just want to remind you that you don't actually have your virtual background up. So on the screen, it's just showing myself and Matthew Gates as the two boxes that are showing. But we've also got Kyle Breeder with us here this evening. Cheers, Kyle. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on again, Jack. And I'm glad everybody's here. Glad everybody's doing well. And yeah, my name is Kyle Breeder. If anybody that's listening to this is looking for feminized seeds, I do have a website. That's the website is the letter P followed by breeding.com. You can check out Predicative Breeding on any social media platform. You can find me there. You can reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. I know I talked about it last week, but I'm actually in the process of spraying all my New England Rock Candy mothers right now. And I should be doing a pretty big cross and a new release that I haven't done yet. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, I'm glad to be here and glad everyone's here.
Good stuff. We're happy to have you. I may have to reach out to you in a little bit. I might get some seeds for my brother as a gift. He's getting started up in his growing process, and I think feminized would be feminized photo period. I think might be the easiest way for him to jump into it. So we may be in contact here in a little bit, Kyle. And want to say I also just dropped some. Speaking of seeds, the American one I just germinated, or at least threw into paper towel some of his Amy Aces. But I want to go ahead and finish the other introductions before we get talking about that. Noah the Grower, go ahead and jump in there next.
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? I'm Noah the Grower with 2 E's on Instagram. You can find me there and check out anything I got going on or have any questions, reach out and I'll do everything I can to interact with people there. And how's it going, everyone?
I'm doing really well. Feeling like I've had a good week. In a good mood right now. Happy to see all of you. At about 3:57 on the West Coast, it was just me and Dr. MJ in the Zoom call, and then one after another, everybody filed in at the last minute, which didn't surprise me, but Doc, I think, was a little bit sitting on the edge of his seat there, wondering if it was just going to be him and Jack for the whole show. But
I was looking forward to it. Yeah, now I'm just going to lean back and be like, I got to share the mic time with other people.
Yep. All right. Well, speaking of other people, we have Matthew Gates. I don't think I've given you a chance to introduce yourself, and I believe you're the last one who's here with us currently.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm Matthew Gates. People who are longtime viewers already know, but I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I've been working in the industry for about 10 years now. And I've been pretty productive. Every week I say that when people ask me, and it's true, and I'm happy to be able to be. You can find my content about various pests and cannabis and other plants on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, the same account that I'm talking with on chat, as well as on Twitter at SyncAngel and on Instagram at SyncAngel.
Well, I'm happy to hear personally that you're being productive still, and I'm happy that I am as well during these trying times. A lot of people are not able to be as productive as they might want to be, so continuing to do the work that we'd like is always a great thing to be able to do. And one of those things that I always enjoy is coming here each week and sharing some of the information and talking with this amazing panel and interacting with the chat. So I just I'm thankful for everybody who shows up each week. I know that we normally talk about that at the end of the show, but I just want to bring that up. We just did the chat sort of lightning round last week. I think we'll definitely take some questions from chat this evening, but I was curious if normally the American one has something on his mind at least, and if anybody else on the panel has something to talk about, if you'd want to kick it off. I was trying to find at the end of an episode, maybe a week or two ago, we got right into a topic at the very end, and then we're like, oh, this will be a great topic for another week, and then I didn't have the time to find it. quite yet. So with that said, the American one, do you have anything, thoughts, comments, or ideas you'd like to explore this evening?
You know, of course, it's one time I don't have something on the shelf right away, but I don't think we got to really discussing that. Or maybe we did. The race. Now I forget even what my question was. Maybe come back to me. Yeah.
It's all
I
right.
had a quick question, and it's for Dr. MJ Coco. So he's talking about when he came on the spring autoflower challenge, and I'm just kind of curious about some autoflowers that panel members would recommend. I've done it with full duplex and it's good, but I'm just looking to kind of try something different and a couple different ones. I have no experience with autoflowers, so I figured I'd ask all you guys that know more about than me.
I think I don't know how you guys, if any of you guys have ran it, but I think 2020 has some. I've been looking at kind of like hawking his post lately, so I think he's got some pretty good gear other than like full duplex.
He's giving away free ones too for the autoflower race is what they're calling it. I think Great Lakes Genetics, if you just pay shipping, will give you free autoflower seeds from 2020 Mendocino. But I think the question was directed at Doc. I know you've grown a lot of autoflowers. Do you have any good suggestions other than Full Duplex, who's a friend of the show?
Well, I got a bunch of autos from now the name is totally escaping me. From the breeder when we did it was like right on the tip of my tongue and it's gonna hit me in a second. When we did the first spring autoflower challenge, I got like
Morning.
What's that?
Was it Morning Star or Miss or
Much Passion.
Oh, okay.
And so that's mainly what I've grown. I have grown some other plants that turned into autos that weren't, I wasn't expecting to be autos. And I sort of have no idea what those were supposed to be or what the breeders were. There's definitely other breeders that I'm interested to try in terms of autos. Around our community, Mephisto is still one of the most popular auto breeders. I'm much less familiar with sort of the Instagram breeding world.
I'll say I was gifted some Mephisto's genetics that I'll be growing at some point this year. It'll be the first autoflowers that I've grown. I also really want to try out some of Humboldt Seed Company. They have some autoflowers as well. They do a lot of different stuff, but their photo periods that I've tried have been amazing. One being the pineapple upside down cake. I've talked about a few times in the past about how I just thought that name, you could never really deliver on it. But then I had a sample of it and it just blew me away how purely pineapple and like vanilla cakey it was. It was just some of the most tasty bud I've ever had in my life. So I've seen a lot of people, shout out to Sungrown 707. He's even offered to give me free seeds and I just don't have the space right now. And I've got a lot of other stuff that I'm growing, but I'd really like to check out some of their stuff. I know Humboldt Seed Organization. I know that there's two different Humboldt seeds. So HSO versus HSC, who I was just talking about. I was a tester for them for a little bit, but they have some really good autoflowers and I didn't grow them myself. My buddy, Chris, he sent me a few samples, one being the OG Kush auto flower from Humboldt Seeds. And it was really, it smelled a lot like OG Kush and it was very potent. The other one being the Bubba Kush autoflower from Humboldt Seeds was fantastic, but he also sent two samples from Mephisto, one being Forgotten Cookies and the other being Alien versus Triangle. I've seen that Forgotten Cookies test 26.2% from Chef Anna, and probably 3 or 4 other people have posted 25% plus THC results. So the whole autos don't have potency myth has sort of been bred out because there's great breeders like Mephisto's. And I also want to give Russ Brandon a chance to jump in the room because I just saw that he's trying to join. But yeah, if anybody else has thoughts on autoflowers, I'd love to hear them before we give Brandon a chance to jump in because it
I
looks
have
like
a
he's
little bit of a complication that I can throw into this to get people thinking about how exactly to grow their autos. We decided just on Friday, we had a meeting to decide on the side challenge for the SFAC. And it's going to be 2. We're going to do a prize for the Auto Supernova plant, which is growing an auto that takes up the most space, one plant that takes up the most space. So that'll be sort of a training challenge. And we're going to bring back the Party Cup autos. So grow a autoflower in a Party Cup as 2 different side challenges, which I think are also sort of things to think about, like what you would want to look for in the specific strain you wanted to grow for that.
That's definitely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that as far as autoflowers are concerned, I've always felt like it's kind of unfortunate when people throw the baby out with the bathwater on various sorts of plants and their little idiosyncrasies. And I think that in some cases it makes sense, and in almost all cases the application for like a special trait, like chlorosis or variegation, for example, in most cases probably not super helpful, might be an indicator for something bad, or simply just a sport mutation. But it might have some cosmetic appeal, and who knows? The same with and I've talked about it before, like this is kind of jumping out from autoflowers to other things, I guess. But like autoflowers are one of those things where in the sort of a collection of other sort of maybe less traditional than the standard scotoperiod trait plant growing, I just feel like there's a lot that we will be able to make use of. And so like even things from like hemp, for seed growth or for branching or that sort of a thing. Those kinds of traits might be really useful in the future to make them much stronger, hold more dense buds perhaps. And so we will have less of that sort of branch break potentially. I'm just curious to see that kind of stuff be admixture.
I will say autoflowers can definitely yield incredibly. It depends on your timelines and electricity use, and if you're growing them indoor or outdoor. I've seen incredible yields pulled off. Mephistos, famously at the beginning, they had one of their growers was really into the photoperiod, the other one was really into the autoflower, and the autos were just killing the yields. Way more, faster turnarounds, all that good stuff. And then they decided to work together and try and breed that photoperiod flavor and potency into the autoflower. And a lot of people would say they've successfully done it. I see people in the chat saying their creme de la creme is some of the best autoflowers that they've tried, as well as the double grape X Skywalker. So cheers to you. Brandon Russ, you actually did a little bit of work yourself breeding some autoflowers, I believe, from Guardian of the Lost Terps with his Russian Ruderalis. And I'm just curious, whatever came of that project, did you find any autos from the F1 Gorilla Glue cross with the autoflower? And you can also go ahead and introduce yourself because you just got here, and let the people know where to find you.
Sure. Yep. I'm Brandon Rust. You can find me on IG at rust.brandon. You can also find a link to the company I own and co-founded, Black Label Organics. You can find my bio nutrient company, Bokashi Earthworks, in there, and Majestic Craft Cannabis is another.
I can't hear Brandon.
Can you hear me?
You're a little bit quiet.
Faintly, a little faint.
Here, I'll turn up my levels.
That's much better.
Maybe that'll work.
He wants us to listen harder.
Hey, that's important.
Yeah, I do a bunch of stuff. I consult with cultivation sites all over the country. I have a couple of partners out here in Oklahoma. I'm all over the place, so always fun to be here. The auto project that I did, so I got those autos from Greg, and they were extremely difficult to germinate, and they were extremely difficult to keep alive. They didn't like soil. They wanted to grow in dirt. And so I crossed it into the Gorilla Glue. I did a little bit of line work. I picked out a pheno that was absolutely beautiful. It was just like Gorilla Glue, and I am assuming that it had a higher cannabinoid CBD profile in it. But only the male side of the first and second generations were autoflower. So I didn't see the allele come out on the female side. But they are very vigorous, and I actually kept that clone for almost a year, just kind of on the back burner, and I just now flipped it again. So we'll see what happens. I still have all the original seed stock, and I just haven't had time. It's kind of the project kind of on the back burner right now.
No worries, man. And it just was sort of relevant to what we were talking about before you jumped in. The American one's actually got his hand up, so I want to give him a chance to jump in.
Yeah, I just have a little question. Does any commercial operations use autoflowers currently? Because I don't know.
Absolutely.
I know Israel's big on that currently.
Yeah,
Scissor Sisters,
growing
Estates.
a lot in market share.
So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be purchasing a couple thousand feminized seeds from Full Duplex.
Well, there you have it.
And what we're going to do is we're going to do early season autos, late season photos. And the reason why we're going to do this is so that we have manageable canopy. what we plan on doing is doing maybe 15 to 25 gallon soil pots, or like about 1.5 to 2 cubic feet of soil per plant. And we're going to just do 2 rows right next to each other, vineyard style. We'll use those green fence post things, that you just hammer in, that they use for like putting up chicken fence and stuff like that, just to do trellis. And we're going to do vineyard style rows, where we're just going to do 2 sets of rows, a walk space, 2 rows, walk space. It'll all be set up with fert lines, all autoflowers early season. They're going to get 6, maybe 7 feet tall. After our autos are done, probably late July, we're going to put in all of our photo period, and they'll probably get around 5-6 feet tall, which is, again, that's manageable. So we can whole plant harvest. We can prune, whole plant harvest, and send it off to the processors that we'll be working with to do live rosin.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because somebody was saying in chat they like the Three Bears OG a lot, and the one time I actually had that was in concentrate form from a dispensary. So to answer the question, it is definitely happening at the commercial level. Scissor Sisters Estates, I follow them. They do photo period and autoflower. Sequence, he's not a commercial producer, but over in Michigan, he has the full patient load or whatever, where you can grow a certain number of plants. I think it's 72 or 84. I think it's 72 in one section and then another 12 in a separate area. But they had a greenhouse where they had autos through the middle, and then the photo periods on the outside of them. They got a harvest of the autoflowers in, and then the photo periods grew up and filled out the space that they were occupying. So they're definitely filling up a space in the market, and I would say that they've definitely come a long way in the breeding.
Why light dep when you can autoflower?
Exactly. And what was the date that you were planning on planting? Because I know you said June, July harvest roughly. So you got to get in there pretty soon-ish, I would be guessing.
Let's see. We're hoping to do April. So it's coming up real soon.
End of the month.
So we're probably going to do mid-April is when I'm hoping to start planting. But it might be late April. So May, June, July, 3 months. Yeah. Should be the end of the July is when we plan on harvesting. So hopefully we can get them in April. I got to go down to Murphy's and have them custom build me some soil. But the problem with that is, they have all these mixes that they do for commercial soil producers all over the country. And so they're kind of used to blending soils a certain way. And for what I want, it's like completely different. So I just have to see if it's doable.
Curious, Brandon, isn't tornado season this springtime?
Yeah.
Do you have anything in place to I'm curious how you're protecting your plants from the inevitable
wind stress?
Is there IPM for a tornado?
Yeah, what's your tornado
Tornadoes
IPM?
really are in the fall, though. I mean, late summer and fall, I think.
No.
Okay.
No. It happens in the spring. That's when tornado season is. I personally haven't experienced any. It's going to be luck of the draw, I guess. We're going to do those autoflowers. We're going to have things out there, and I'm going to be, busting out the microbes, busting out all the science that I know to keep that, abiotic stress down. But if it happens, it's just going to see. We'll see.
Hey, I mean, if you have a miraculous situation, not that I'm saying it'll be miraculous for them to survive, but you gotta call something Tornado OG or something like that. That's a cool name. I just had that thought.
Well, let's not hope that he gets a tornado in order to do it.
Yeah.
No, perhaps not.
We have a plan. I have a plan. I want to be able to, within the next 5 years, have this land completely bioremediated so I can put plants directly in the ground with genetics that have been acclimated to the Oklahoma environment.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe a windbreak with natural trees, or maybe native trees or something like that could be cool. I'm already working with somebody currently on that in Central California. That'll be interesting.
I have some historical data about tornadoes in Moore, Oklahoma. The last
That's where
one.
I live.
Yeah, that's why I just Googled Moore, Oklahoma tornadoes, and 3/25/2015. So be about this time of year was the last one 6 years ago. And then before that, 5/20/2013.
That was a big one, too.
5/10/2010. Most of them are in what's the 5th month? January, February, March, April, May. So a lot of them are happening in May, June 9th in 2004, May 8th in 2003, May 3rd in 99, and then October in 98 was the most recent one before that. So they can definitely hit
Brandon,
Yeah, I
any
think
time
they
of
do
year.
sometimes happen in the fall, but I was getting crossed with hurricane season.
Brandon,
Oh, I see.
could you just plant like a big hemp field to remediate whatever dirt is in there and throw out that crop, and then it'll be clean for the next season?
So here's the thing about hemp, right? It's not about like remediating toxins from the soil. It's about bioremediating and turning the dirt into soil with a higher soil
Oh, okay,
food
okay.
web. So all that soil food web science, this is where it actually applies, and it's not so much applying to like the modified growing mixes. So this is where all the stuff comes in, where you start implementing crop covers and you start using composts and bokashi and your mineral inputs. This is where you add those things. You till in once, you start your crop covers, and you start implementing multiple different crop species that can synergistically work together. And you do that over a certain amount of years to increase the
Yeah, you turn your dirt into
structure.
soil.
Yeah. So you're basically, and one of the big things is when we're talking about like the bioremediation aspect, a lot of the soil carbon comes from plant exudates. So when you have a lot of crop cover, you can help increase that carbon storage, but it's also creating pore space. It's all about building that soil and trying to do what it would take, eons to basically do, and to break that down, release it, cycle it, and change it from, one form to another in a really, really short amount of time.
I really am very interested in everything you just said, Brandon. And if anything, maybe you could give me a little bit of information to do that at my house. And I mean, whatever, I'll give you something back or something. But I'm really interested in doing that. I have a 16 by 16 garden. I want to do it just for my vegetable, but then I want to learn there and then move on to weed. Like I've kind of cannabis. I've kind of gotten to where I'm plateauing and where I'm at. I'm really happy with the results, but I definitely want to move on to that living soil kind of learning. I figure what better area to learn than just outside the vegetable garden, then I'll just apply it later.
Yeah, so that's a really, really great way to start. And one of the things that, I talk about when it comes to home grow, the reason why I love to be able to help people get into that is because having that self-sufficiency can help build other modes of self-sufficiency. So I didn't start growing food until after I started growing my weed organically. And then I was like, well, I can grow food too. So I highly encourage it. What we're going to be doing, I work with Bryant Mason very, very frequently. I share data with him constantly to help, build the science that we're all, there's a group of people, agronomists and people who understand the analytics for things like the tissue and sap testing and agronomy to go with it. And so I have a really wide understanding of how all of the data is correlating, and I have the data to back it up with the plant. So I work with him a lot, and he is going to, not this year, but probably next year, be working on the project on the farm, doing the bioremediation. We're going to start this year, but he's probably going to physically be out there at some point because we want to, again, using cannabis to kind of showcase how a small farm can produce volumes of not just cannabis, but I'd like to also grow food crops as well. And
So
then,
Brandon, for people that want to do that at their home, how different is the soil mix from your cannabis soil mix to a food mix? And can a lot of stuff be grown in your typical mix that you would use for your cannabis as well?
yes, you're going to be able to grow all types of food at home with any type of the things that are marketed for cannabis. But the problem is, like, it's marketed for cannabis, so it's going to be more expensive. And here's a really cool thing. So like my backyard at my rental, for instance, because I rent a place, and it's, nobody's been dumping chemicals on it or anything for years, and it's got pretty nice soil in it. So I tested it out, and I can grow cucumbers in it. I can grow tomatoes in it. I can grow corn directly in it. I can grow peppers. I can grow all of these things in it. Just takes a little bit of maintenance. If you have like completely dead soil, then obviously you need to hydrate it. You need to try to increase the biology, add some inputs to it. But
Would you
doesn't
recommend
take
that over
much.
like throwing down a cardboard, box and then doing a little raised bed or something where you could just drop in your own fresh soil and then start building, I guess, like fresh from something that is good?
Either option is really good, especially if you
Depends on the
have
crops, I
extra
would say.
soil. Yeah. But here's the thing too. You could take backyard soil, even if it's bad. Let's say you put in your raised beds and you want to work on the rest of the soil, and you can start growing crop covers, and just multi blend crop covers. And while your other stuff is growing, let that grow, chop it down, let it grow up, and just keep doing that. And you're going to add all that organic matter that's going to decompose, release minerals. It's going to, again, add exudates to the soil, carbon. You're going to aerate the soil with the roots. We all kind of know how this works. It's pretty simple, and it's just really about building the soil structure, getting trying to maximize the gas exchange, so that way you can have more biology present to help the nutrient cycling. It's just basically like push starting a lawnmower kind of.
What crop cover would you recommend for someone for like a 15 by 16 like plot of garden? And then when should I plant it? Should I plant it like, you know what I mean, like this fall, and have it for next year? Should I plant it around like existing like vegetable plants when I plant them? Like I'm really into all this. Like I was gonna ask you in direct message chat, but I didn't want to bug you, and I was figured I'd bring it up on the show anyway. So I'm really interested in all that kind of stuff right now.
So using several different species of crop cover can be beneficial, because you can get things like, if you use brassica, it's like mustards, they have glycosinolates. Yeah, and those are natural fungicides. Then you have, your legumes, which will fix atmospheric nitrogen. You want a kind of a diversity of different types of plants. So things like your vetch, your grasses, like your rye, your beans, which are legumes, clover, which is another legume, it's another nitrogen fixer. They all kind of work relatively the same way, and you can kind of get them in a combination, or even, a crop cover that I like to use is daikon radish, rye, and clover. It's three different things. They all serve kind of similar purposes, but like the daikon radish creates these huge tubulars, which really just tears soil open, and it leaves this. So like in my backyard, I did a bunch of daikon radish and crop covered, and the daikon radish was huge. I mean, we're talking like, nice, big, thick tubulars, but the soil was not loose enough for me to actually be able to pull them out. So when I tried to pull them out, they just broke. And so there was essentially these foot long, big old tubulars that are breaking down and turning into organic matter and releasing minerals and nutrients, but also it, opened that soil up.
Do you still carry a crop cover through Bokashi Earthworks?
It's the one that I just mentioned. It's the 3 blend.
And then you mentioned the clover, but you didn't specify if somebody was looking out and buying the seeds individually. I remember you mentioned that you tried a few different clover and some had problems and you liked one over the other for a certain reason.
Yeah, the problem is that certain clovers grow tall. You want the Dutch or white clover, which are low growing clover. And the reason why you want that type of clover is because if you get the other kind, it'll grow really tall into your plants. And if you're not maintaining constantly, pruning back, chopping and dropping, it'll actually release seeds and it'll drop in your weed. So you'll have these little clover seeds in your.
I've definitely experienced that before.
That sounds like no good, but I want to give a second to give a big shout out to Spartan Grown, who just joined us. Spartan, welcome. Why don't you let the people know where they can find you?
What's up, everybody? Sorry I'm late. Lost track of time with a stupid time change. But yeah, you can find me at Instagram, Spartan Grown, all one word. Otherwise, you can shoot me an email at Gmail. If you don't have an Instagram, shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com.
So to bring you into the loop a little bit, we were talking a little bit about Noah was asking Brandon about growing his own cannabis outside in his backyard, as well as like growing it next to like a vegetable garden. And I asked about if their soils would be the same, like if you could grow your vegetables and fruit and everything like that in the same soil that you would use for your cannabis. Something I wanted to mention, and especially now since you just hopped into the room, a soil that both you and I have used. It's called the M3 mix, but it's marketed towards cannabis growers and general growers. So they have the medical marijuana mix, M3, and then they have the Michigan made mix. So there's two different websites. And if you go to one, they show it growing. It's like the grow anything mix. They grow flowers, vegetables, fruit, and it works for a whole bunch of general stuff, water only. But then you see these people growing cannabis in it, and it works really well as a base. And then you can re-amend it or add things as you go. And I personally really liked it, but I'm just re-amending it now. But it's interesting to see that they've marketed towards both cannabis and general growers, and that it works fairly well for both.
Yeah,
Actually,
I wouldn't recommend generally to do that. I'm going to be interplanting cannabis with vegetables just because I want the stealth factor myself, but generally I wouldn't do that just because, for example, off the top of my head, squash. It seems like the squash always seem to, I don't know if they attract it, but they always get that PM. And, different plants, vegetables wise, attract different pests seemingly. And so for me, I would rather use my vegetable garden as a banker plants per se to attract the pests towards them and then put my cannabis in a different location.
I could totally empathize with that perspective. It really depends on what people are trying to do. Like I'm working with somebody right now, Saigo International, and they're trying to grow in sort of the Chaparral, California, creosote sage or creosote bush kind of environment. And they're trying to make use of the native plants there as well as the hemp that they're growing. And I think that's a really interesting context, and I'm very excited to be helping them in that capacity too. So if anyone's interested in that kind of work, it sounds like you've got two people on the panel who knows a thing or two at the very least. And I also agree with what Spartan's saying here. Like with the vetch and the clover, there's a lot of like pests that come to my mind that will definitely use them as a host. So people ask me, because when I often tell people that you should cull unnecessary plant life, but what's necessary is definitely depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And you should just crop scout both. Like that's the best way. I definitely like to have plants growing in a remediated area or a place where I'm trying to remediate, simply for the reasons like Brandon says. Not only do you get sort of that nutritional and microbial growth and just sort of terraforming the space, you also have what Spartan mentioned, you get like a banker plant effect for like higher level organisms like your predatory insects and mites, and sometimes also the pests that feed on them. But as long as you're trying to crop scout it and keep it sustained and managed, and keep an eye on it, then I think usually you'll do okay.
I really want to give a shout out to Mendo Dope because they're putting out their new DVD, like How to Grow, which is a little bit old school, old fashioned, but they have been showing a lot of stuff on their YouTube for free for many, many years. And most recently, if you've watched, if anybody's seen it, they have a lot of plants sort of interplanted within their cannabis, but it's not directly like in the same beds. They have these giant mounds and huge trees of cannabis plants, but then they also have a bunch of pollinators. So there's bees and other predators that are attracted. So they have a lot of a really like natural environment going on, and you see butterflies and all sorts of things flying around in their garden.
I wouldn't necessarily want to see butterflies flying around my garden personally, but I can appreciate the being able to create biodiversity, especially if you're able to cull the infestations with beneficials.
It's interesting. I think it's beautiful, but sometimes it can be naturally balancing. Like they seem to have successful crops year after year, and even with like the massive fire that blocked out the sun for months, like it seemed, I think it was a month and a half up north where there's very little sun coming through because of all the smoke, and many of their plants still made it through and are on the market. And it's interesting, people find a way to get through outdoor each year with incredibly difficult conditions, and everybody has a different approach to doing it. Some people keep them completely separated, and some people interplant a ton of different things. And I think that you can be successful both ways as long as you're diligent in crop scouting, trying to keep both plants healthy. You should be around them enough to give that time to crop scouting. I think it's something that's undervalued, and more people should dedicate time to that within their gardening practices, checking out all their plants and their leaves, not just making sure that they're fed, but making sure that you don't have anything else going on that you don't want going on. So I want to give Kyle Breeder a chance to jump in, see if you have any thoughts on the growing outdoor, growing your own food and things like that. I know it's got to be a little bit more difficult over there on the East Coast with some of the harsher weather, but I know Michigan also gets hard weather, and they still manage to pull off some really good outdoor crops. So I'm curious what you think, Kyle.
Oh, I'm still dreaming of the day I can finally get out of it. Well, basically put myself in a situation where I can have a house with a backyard. So I mean, I haven't really done much outdoor growing, but I still dream of that day. Especially some of the I still have like tons and tons of stock of all that like heirloom and landrace stuff that I have from way back when. If you look through way back into my material on my social media website, and I just love to just plant some of those sativas that I have, Highland Thai sativas that just get like basically like 15, 16 feet tall. But yeah, I think it's an amazing thing, man. I think now that I'm stepping into organic, and again, somebody made a comment earlier on my social media that, to not trash people who use salt. And I'm not, like, everyone has their own thing. I just think personally, like, I kind of eat organic. I just think if you're consuming products that are organic is a pretty decent way to go about doing things. But ever since I ventured into that realm, I just have so much more respect for people who, like any farmer that's just been like using the land and just like utilizing that. And, when I look back into like, generations prior and how they were doing it, and it's an art form, and it's a skill, and be able to just utilize what you have on this earth and just to make beautiful crops that are, to me, clean, or in my thought process is cleaner maybe. But yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of going as we go. I learned a lot from you guys in this, because I went from salt to organic, and I think it's an amazing thing, and you can utilize it and learn it. I mean, even if something were to happen down the road where we don't have products like that, I just think it's an amazing thing to know that you could just always survive off of the land. So I think it's an amazing thing to know.
I'm glad you're enjoying it and you were able to make the switch over successfully and have, not had terrible results with it. The one thing I wanted to mention was one of the lanky plants that I remember you grew. I was mispronouncing in the past and calling it Kerala. It's Kerala. It's from India, I believe. It's Kerala.
I was always calling it Kerala too.
Yeah, somebody DM'd me or even wrote a comment on the show, and they're like, it's actually pronounced Kerala. And I looked it up, and they're like, yeah, I had like a friend who was from there, and or maybe they went there personally, but it's Kerala apparently. I might be misremembering how but I'm 99% sure that is what it is. But that was an amazing plant, and that's actually the one that Mendo Dope was trying to do, like the tallest plant in the world. But that one unfortunately got really stunted by the fire blocking out the sun for a while. It was at like 15 or 16 feet. They're growing it on just a straight up, and they said they were growing it from clone. So next year they're going to try one from seed and try and just grow it as tall as they can, just for the sort of like interesting, entertaining fact of it, and maybe being like the world record holder kind of thing. It's interesting to watch them try it.
I still got flower. I still have like, gosh, I have like 6 ounces of Highland Thai, probably like 4 or 5 ounces of that. I saved all that flour because I haven't even like, I just basically have Ziploc bags full of that stuff, fully seeded. And I plan on running it through my machine and maybe doing like a limited seed drop for some people who are kind of interested in that stuff. But yeah, I still have some of those seeds, man. I'm pretty excited just to have them in stock, and just to hold on to.
I have some of that Highland Thai you gave me still too.
Yeah, if you look through my video, man, there's a guy that I gave it to as a clone because I mean, as you guys know, I grew it in my tent, which was an interesting feat in itself, and I still have that weed. And but I gave a kid a clone, and he had a really big backyard, and he put it out when it was maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, and I went to go check it out right before first frost, and that thing was like 16, 17 feet tall, legitimate Christmas tree, and the flower was dark, like black purple. It was so beautiful, and if you look through my feed. There's a video of it, of me checking it out, and I took a video. It's just a wicked interesting to see how, how things were before we kind of started playing with things.
Speaking of that, growing plants from those regions and kind of changing it and playing with it, I saw Breeder Steve on Twitter was talking a little bit about some of these places like Afghanistan and places like that were complaining that people like kind of stole their genetics. But then his reply was, it's a global plant and your ancestors were shipping the stuff to us with seeds in it. So we grew them. And so I'm curious what kind of your thoughts are on anybody's thoughts are on that. Like we kind of all going back to like the DJ Short days in the 70s where they were starting with just really true unbred, often landrace or heirloom genetics that either came in the bud or they went and hand selected in those countries. So
I have a interesting take.
I've seen a similar sentiment too on LinkedIn. Oh, you go first.
No, yeah, I got a quick one. I was going to say that we were talking about invasive plants, but they're plants of the world, the whole entire world. So, there's ways they make it over one way or another. Not just
I remember
humans.
talking about that particular point before, but I'm interested to hear.
Yeah.
Too, and then I want to jump in.
Invasivity is one of those things, like whether something's exotic or endogenous, and how long it takes for a plant that goes into a new area to be considered by us, right? Because these are all concepts that humans made up. I'm not saying they're not useful at all, even.
Not necessarily. Yeah, you can define invasives based on their impact on ecological stability.
Exactly.
A true invasive has a disruptive effect on the equilibrium in any kind of ecosystem, and that's why they're problematic, essentially.
Moving from like invasive to adaptive, like cannabis. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what do you determine as destructive? It's just changing the landscape.
It has it destabilizes the equilibrium. So if you look at something like pine bark beetle or something, it comes through and it makes an irreversible change on the ecosystem. It doesn't just sort of enter into equilibrium with the rest of the things. Every ecosystem has sort of a balance between different organisms filling different niches and being in competition, and there's predators and there's prey and there's limited resources and all of that. And it takes a while in ecology. This is sort of what ecologists study, for it to achieve a level of equilibrium where things are relatively balanced.
It would just take a lot of time, right? Because it makes me think of Joshua Stevenson.
Yeah, eventually a new equilibrium is achieved, but it can be at a very different level.
Destructive cost.
After the end of a massive extinction event. And so you're right, we do define those sort of massive extinction events or things like desertification to be sort of negative outcomes from species moving around.
There was a few times where cannabis kind of got down to, from my understanding in the history, it was just in a few places and then it spread back out. So what I was kind of getting to was changing from the topic of invasive to adaptive and where cannabis's origin may have been and how it's changed so much, whether there's been breeding involved or just the epigenetic change of growing it from a high mountaintop is a lot different than growing it in a tropical environment, whether it's the same exact clone or, a seed line from that area. Granted, they'll share a lot of similarities in some respect. Where it's grown and how it's grown is going to impact it a lot as well. And then cultural kind of things over time.
That's one of the things I was thinking about earlier, and I actually wrote some notes that, and then the topics moved on. Like cannabis has been bred for yield, it's been bred for potency, it's been bred a little bit for flavor or maybe even for look in some cases. But I don't think there's very many breeders that have pursued other kinds of things. Matthew was talking about like branch strength, other things like germination rates, for example. That's almost selected by accident in a lot of these breeding projects. So there's definitely things that we've done to the plant by selecting particular traits like that. And it would be interesting to potentially look at selecting for other kinds of traits.
I'd argue,
Absolutely.
no doubt we've picked for looks, whether it's like the freak show, duck leaf, or purple, or just tighter like nugs, whether it was for yield or because it was just so frosty and it looked appealing. Grinspoon was one, the Dr. Grinspoon plant that was probably chosen for how it looked because it was so unique and different.
Right.
And,
but that's really sort of the exotics then. I mean, that's not sort of where the dominant thrust of the cannabis breeding has just been for yield and potency.
oh, I totally agree with that.
I would
And
also say
in the end, that's really the same thing because it's just sort of the amount of cannabinoids that the plant is able to produce.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say also that, like, to Jack's point about, origins and expansion and all that, like, I heard, I was reading a sentiment on LinkedIn, somebody who I don't remember the name of, probably because of somebody's liked account or some shit. But they were saying that the plant, like, basically from a cultural perspective belonged to the like Middle Eastern peninsula or to Asia, and that it was sort of this similar kind of like feeling that if anyone who's interacting with it now who is not part of these cultures are sort of robbing or appropriating culture. But it was surprising to me because like, those who don't know, like, it's expanded way past that area, even if it is a potential speciation point, way before even chimpanzees.
It's interesting. There are some crops that become really identified with the culture that cultivated them. But there are other crops that really become associated with cultures that didn't cultivate them.
That's true.
And have been
like
totally
carrots.
appropriated by, the Italians appropriated tomatoes from the Mesoamericans.
I felt the same way. How traditional is an Italian food if it contains tomatoes as an important recipe?
Yeah,
Right,
well,
right.
that's Italian food. Italian food has tomatoes since the 15th century. I mean, so at a certain point, the exercise in saying at this moment in history was when things were pure, and stuff that's happened since then is contamination and shouldn't have happened, and we should try to not consider that to have happened. I agree. I think probably with Tao that's the sort of the form of that doesn't make sense. We have to accept the world that we live in certain senses.
I've seen a similar sort of controversy, and I'm curious if you're familiar about it, Dr. MJ, with the Anglo-Saxon, Frisian, and Norse, I think, those different cultures, and like especially in anthropology, looking at them, and because that's definitely an admixture of various cultures from like Europe, and like where you define certain groups over others, and who did or didn't do or created certain things is like
and a lot of that stuff, the groups are defined, and the history is attributed, or the perspective of the history is told often from a specific political perspective.
Yes,
and that absolutely enters into these things in an interesting way. Since it enters into the way that people are defining the groups, it ends up influencing the ways the groups behave. So you have to, and the ways the groups then are. So both things matter. We can't just say like, oh no, these are the ones that are really the Anglo-Saxons or something. And the ways the local people are defining these groups are wrong. The ways that people do that end up influencing that.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
I'm just saying I've been playing a lot of Valheim, and I've been exposing myself more and more to something I've already got a lot of familiarity with from just a hobbyist perspective, but I've always found those sort of how would I articulate it? They're interesting interactions, and they're interesting histories, and the more that we learn, I think it's the more complex it is. Just like the microbes we find in the soil, it's just a
one
very
of the
complex
really
history.
interesting things here, I think, is about crop genetic resources, about who has ownership or claim to different things. We beat around this issue a lot when we're talking about like, you know, owning seed lines or patenting seeds or genes, or if people should be able to breed from the genetics, or these contracts that prevent you, or, you know, things done with breeding to prevent you from being able to save seeds. If or if crops should belong to certain cultures. And if crops should belong to certain cultures, this is a big issue in bioethics now. How do you define the culture that they belong to? And do they have to share with the rest of us, or can they just decide not to? Like, what if, you know, some pharmaceutical drug can be distilled from a plant that we discover that has already been discovered by an indigenous group, thousands of years they've been using this thing. Should Western science be able to have access to that? These are real deep ethical questions.
I agree 100%, especially with the patenting and things like that. But an interesting thought, I guess, is if you go back to, I guess, the 1930s, 40s, when cannabis started becoming illegal in the US, we still kind of had it and passed it around. And there were places like UK where it's still illegal for the most part. And some of the most iconic like flour has come from there, the UK cheese. And that genetic has spread all across the world, and people have access to it and crosses of it. And things like that have happened in the modern days in the US from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way up till now. And it's interesting because it's like, how far in history do we want to go back? Because it just depends how deep you want to reach and who gets credit. I would love to give credit to, like, I love the Purple Punch a lot. As far as crosses with it, I think that they breed really well. And there's a guy named Supernova Gardens, and they have, you know, lineage and provenance to show that they bred that plant, and they're from Hawaii or whatever. And if it ever becomes to the point in federal where they can say like, hey, I invented this or whatever cultivar, I want to do a licensing thing or a patent or whatever it is, I'd be happy to pay, if I could afford it, to, you know, license that cultivar if they're going to put it out like that. And I think that's like how Josie Wales was working it with GG4, but it doesn't necessarily have to go that way. But it's one way.
That's the other thing. I'd rather take the attitude where everybody acknowledges that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and that whatever improvements that we individually can make to this is because of literally generations of multiple cultures of people throughout eons, right, throughout centuries, of doing that work that then we took and did the final step with. And I think we need to consider really carefully about how important that final step was in the grand scheme of things, how much we actually sort of contributed, and how much we're just standing on the shoulders of giants, and that's where we need to direct sort of our attention and our thanks and our praise. See, it's like doing that final cross or something, or making that then becomes a popular thing. It's like, wow, you know how much other people had to work so long to create this community resource that then you did something to. How much of that then becomes some private, profitable, patentable, personal thing, and how much of it is still sort of standing on the shoulders of the community resource that was developed through generations? And that's where I'm always sort of, you know, difficult with trying to set up ways to profit off of crop genetic resources like that, whether it's cannabis or whether it's other things. And that's really different than like breeding seeds and selling seeds. This is more like the licensing deals though, and patenting things and stuff like that.
Well, the thing is, unfortunately, if it's not one of the people that's in the community doing it, it's these big companies, because legally all they have to do is make a single cross for the most part, from what I understand with the genetic patenting and licensing. One single cross is enough, because unfortunate for the giants that they're standing on the shoulders of, and all of us are, they weren't doing it while it was legal, at least here in the United States. So it's not going to be recognized by the patent offices and the places where these big businesses are going to go in there and start patenting and doing those things. And that's why I think a lot of the people doing their own work and their own crosses right now in-house, where they can prove like, hey, I took this and crossed it with that, and then they work these certain lines, they have sort of protection that they can always grow their own stuff for the most part. I think some
The
people
way
are
the
afraid they
system
won't
is
be able to grow.
working now, it requires you to participate in the system in order to sort of try to defeat it. So if you disagree with the principle that crop genetic resources should be owned, then you have to own them and make them share. Essentially, that's the only way to do it. There's a lot of efforts, though, in international development forums to approach this particular issue differently, usually around issues of biomedical research with crop resources. And they're developing other kinds of models in terms of sort of defining the stakeholders and determining sort of rights-based issues that don't have to operate within that same sort of patent framework. So
one thing I want to say is I think that it's in my opinion, for the people that are trying to like patent it to like take over the whole market, I think it's a little bit of a fool's errand, because if you look at like Charlotte's Web, they had that CBD line that got a lot of notoriety, and rest in peace to Charlotte Figge. She had seizures and other ailments that CBD helped a lot, and it got a lot of attention on the national news, and I think it brought a lot of positive attention to cannabis generally. So I think that was a really great thing of it, but they were kind of the type of people that they're business people, and they wanted to make as much money as they could off of that strain, and they're trying to claim like, oh, theirs is the only one that's going to cure you. But then quickly it was sort of found out, well, like CBD is just good in general, and there's a bunch of other CBD strains that you don't have to just get Charlotte's Web. You can get this one or that one or that one that might also help your family out, and people can try for themselves, and they don't have to necessarily go through the one person who's going to try and, you know, hold it and make you pay a much higher dollar for it. And our community has shown over and over where they can sort of spread that stuff out. Kevin Jodrey I want to give a shout out. He gave out CBD clones for free for years, thousands of them, and helped a lot of people. And I think that our community has done a great job of sharing the genetic resources to make the people that need it most have it available as much as possible.
I agree.
Reminded of the
I totally agree.
silkworm. I'm reminded of the silkworm debacle. Over a long time, silkworm cultivation, livestock, mini livestocking. Anyways, was a controlled sort of thing, and then a couple of people, stole them out on mulberry leaves and canes and brought them over to other places. But I don't think there's anyone advocating for us to like return all the silk resources and technology, back.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Exactly. They were at the time, though.
The beauty is like shows like this, once the cat's out of the bag, once people know how to grow their own and they know the diversity of cannabis, the amount of cannabinoids that it can produce, and the amount that you can produce in your own home very affordably, safely, and stealthily, if you choose to do it that way, like a lot of us personally do, you can provide something really great for yourself or your family who may be in need. And cannabis provides a wide array of different cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids and ketones and all those other amazing things that many of us enjoy about the plant. But it's so diverse. It's not just THC or CBD. There's lots and lots of other things in there that help people.
Jack, you should make one of those shirts that are super popular right now. They're just like black with like white text that have just a bunch of words that I guess are just like identity signals for people to know that you're into those things, and just put those like cannabinoids, terpenes, ketones, esters. It's like I grow. You'll make tons of money, man.
There's a guy, he was on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle. His name is Canna Mink, and he has a company. Shout out to him. He's hilarious. He was really funny, entertaining episode. Go check it out if you haven't seen it already. But he has shirts that say terpenes on them, and there's like different spots and logo styles, but he wears them during any of his videos. And he has a really good intro song. It's like, if you're not 18, get the fuck out of here, get the fuck out of here. And that's unfortunately how the show has to be for the most part. I think this is an adult only content for growing. And I guess in some rare occasions, there are, parents that would probably watch with their kids who may need the medical benefit, but I think it just depends on the state. A lot of people still, unfortunately, stigmatize children being around cannabis or working with cannabis. But I think even some people on this panel and probably in the chat have their kids work with their plants, and I personally don't see anything wrong with it. It's like teaching them how to grow any other plant, and if they're going to use it when they're an adult or if they need it now for medical purposes, then I think that there should be open, acceptance of that, because it's helped so many people already. So I think more states are going to get on board, and it's just a matter of time until I think all 50 states will have at least medical within the next 5-10 years, probably less.
Well, Mexico just legalized. I think that's gonna kind of we're sandwiched in between two legal countries, so it's gonna happen real quick. I know it's coming. It's gonna happen probably.
Same thing that happened to the ornamental flower
2022.
industry. Yeah.
Well, can you elaborate a little bit more, Matthew?
You want to guess?
Oh, it's gonna go bye-bye because everybody's gonna try to convert to growing weed.
Oh, I was gonna say. I see. I was gonna say the glut from other countries of the if trade is allowed, right? And
Oh,
so-
yeah. No, absolutely. That you're absolutely right, because what he's referring to is that a majority of flowers that you would buy from a shop are imported from Mexico.
Yeah, and Africa too, and South America. And for a long time, the big reason was because of the labor differences. But now, even those countries are getting really high tech from other places and from their own domestic produce. So they're actually becoming very, very competitive. And sorry to say it, but Gerber growers, rose growers, I kind of came into growing professionally in agriculture at the end of that sort of line. I feel like there's only 1 or 2 Gerber growers in the California that are really they're really quite large. A lot of it's happening in Europe and the Netherlands and also South America and Africa. So
Yeah, agriculture, if it's given the chance, will relocate to cheaper labor.
that's a good
The
point.
Dutch have automated so much.
That's for sure.
Historically, they've produced amazing amounts of everything in their greenhouses, and they've continued to automate. I've seen UVC rails over some of their places for IPM, and I think that's really interesting. And I wonder if more places are going to try and implement things like that. But they've produced lots of different flowers for many, many years and been very successful. That's one of their probably larger exports still to this day, I'd imagine.
But I don't think they're talking about international cannabis exports at this point. So I don't think any cannabis produced in Mexico is going to,
Canada's 16.
legally
Yo,
imported into the
Canada-
United States market.
Canada is supplying Germany right now.
Most of their supply goes to Germany. That's why all the people in Canada, unfortunately, don't get good quality. From what I understand, a lot of the bigger contracts are going directly to Germany.
I'm just talking about the legalization in Mexico and the U.S. market.
But that's a good point, though. Yeah. And I think you're right. I don't think that's quite. I mean, I'm sure that will be tackled at some point. But
How
when,
soon?
I'm not sure.
How soon until we got that legal Mexi brick being shipped over here?
That's right.
Well, it wouldn't be brick.
I don't think Mexi
anymore.
brick
that
is
was
coming
just
back,
a
dude.
building step,
What,
I
no
only want it if
tradition?
it's brick and
Where's your
seeded.
tradition? Where's your tradition, Brent?
Yeah. Hashtag bring back the brick.
Bring back the brick.
On
Sometimes
Dude
you
Grows,
could
he's
get-
got some.
sometimes you could
That's a
get the
hashtag that's not going to go places, I think.
I want
Yeah, I know,
Hawaiian
right?
weed.
There were good Mexi pounds though. The nice fluffy pillows, the pretendies.
Yeah, they would fluff it up and spray a little bit of moisture in there, make it a little bit,
No, I'm
more
talking about
appealing.
actually decent Mexican
Decent,
pounds
real
that
good,
weren't
yeah.
that weren't just total shit. It was you could see there was resin on there.
You know,
It had a little
somebody,
bit of a smell. It smelled like weed.
some
instead of,
people in
ammonia.
Mexico must have liked smoking it. Someone was growing it good in Mexico.
It was probably fire
had to
closer to
be.
the source.
Before
By
you
the time I
back
got to
it up,
Ohio,
listen, I've lived in Mexico. I've traveled around Mexico quite a bit. I've
Okay.
had the opportunity to enjoy the local cannabis, and it's not like that before you put it in the trash compactors.
Yeah.
So the stuff that's grown like that, it's harvested the whole plant basically. The plants are tossed into a pile where they're dried out, in a pile under the sun for a few days, and then it's put into a trash compactor to make these bricks of weed that you get exported. I mean, if you go through that's one of the reasons that we say, properly dried and cured cannabis is more than half of the final flavors, because you do something like that, you're going to end up with brickweed.
I'm curious, what is your opinion about the possibility for the cannabis reform in Mexico to help some of the more struggling areas of Mexico, particularly like Oaxaca and other southern parts of Mexico, where I think agriculture is a really big part of their sort of GDP,
Yeah.
essentially.
Will the cartel still
You
be in
know,
control?
in Oaxaca, most of the communities in Oaxaca are autocratic, so they're self-sufficient, or they try to produce primarily for self-sufficiency. They're not self-sufficient, I shouldn't say that, but they grow milpa, they grow corn, beans, and squash in the traditional sort of Mesoamerican trilogy. You guys were talking about intercropping earlier with squash, and all I could think of is that squash is one of the most commonly intercropped plants and like sort of the most famous crop.
With the Three Sisters method, right?
What's it? Yeah. Yeah, it's called different things, but yeah, the trilogy. That's there locally they call it milpa. And the communities, I mean, those communities like survive because for 500 years they've been trying to take care of their own business and sort of provide for their own food and not have to intersect and engage with sort of the mainstream economy to the extent that they don't have to. They're really secure in the fact that they produce most of their own food.
They're self-sufficient.
They're not, yeah, that's what I said. They're not self-sufficient. They need to sell stuff. They need to engage with the market. But what they'd prefer to sell are their staple crops that they grow, the corn and the beans. And the prices of corn and beans over the last few decades, really under free trade, has just been hammered. So the communities are looking for other crops to sort of have a cash crop in their rotation. But a lot of cash crops, yeah, cannabis is an interesting one. You know, I mean, it's grown down there already, and people already use cannabis in some communities as a cash crop. There's been efforts recently to do other things with agave, and there was a big project that sort of failed spectacularly because it took too long for the agave to mature, and the farmers are like poor farmers. They can't wait 7 years for a crop to harvest. They can't dedicate land that would otherwise be used for growing corn and beans and stuff like that for growing other crops. So it's a balancing act, but yeah, it could definitely help some places. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but you hit on something.
I appreciate the insight. Yeah, no, definitely.
I don't think that Mexico's, federal legislation means shit until we have federal legislation, because then you still can't transport anything. But
there's a large domestic market there for it.
And here's the thing, I think,
do they have money?
I think that it would be a very long time before we're seeing an influx of the type of weed that we want to see as consumers come from Mexico, because one, they have a huge market to fulfill themselves, which it's going to take years for them to catch up. They're going to need cultivators. They're going to need training. It's going to take a long time for them to catch up, so
you just need a Green New Deal.
Man, they caught up in other crops really quickly, Brandon.
They have operations going right now.
In Southern California. When Matthew was talking about the cut flowers, I was thinking a little bit earlier to the table grapes, which used to dominate in San Diego County, and they're gone, basically. All those grapes have been relocated. And let me tell you, it's easier to locate cannabis than it is to locate grapevines, or to transplant them, or to set up.
But we're talking about like a commercial, commercial outdoor weed, which is going to be fucking trash. So that's why I'm saying.
Most of your vegetables, especially in the winter, especially in places like Southern California, come from Mexico. They have very high standards for crop quality. They're totally on board in terms of hitting those kinds of standards. So
they're often particularly imported here into California. We all here know how fastidious California is about that.
The mega farms in Sinaloa and in other states in northern Mexico have sort of huge advantage. They have a lot of capital, and they have access to very cheap labor, which is sort of a humanitarian disaster, but it's reality. They have access to sort of unlimited supplies of very cheap labor that's practiced in agriculture. So the idea that the United States has a competitive advantage in terms of knowledge or in terms of capital, I think is not going to hold for very long. But again, I think that it's going to be the border that actually, and the legal structure about importing and exporting under the trade agreements that we have, that will protect U.S. cannabis farmers to the extent that the politicians want to protect U.S. cannabis farmers.
Yeah,
I've
and how many
I've always wondered
politicians
if
give a
maybe
shit about farmers, though.
I want to hear
I
Noah's
They
thoughts
give
here.
quite a bit, actually. That's the
Let's
farm bill every year that passes, and that's why U.S. farmers sort of dominate in the global production of food.
Noah,
I've
what
done
do
a
you have
lot
to
of-
say there?
I've done a lot of thinking about this, and because I know people that are involved in the rec markets, and I almost wonder sometimes if that's kind of why it hasn't been fairly legalized, is because you got people that are investing a lot of money, and then you're talking about huge competition. So I'm almost wondering if that has something to do with it. And I'm sure there's the whole prison system and all that goes into it too. But I often wonder if that's part of it, and if there might be something in there for a while to kind of just make it like tariffs, or I've thought a lot about this subject, and I think it's a very, very deep subject. I really think.
Yeah.
You think there's backroom deals going down? Like,
Just remember that-
Definitely.
100%.
There's
yeah,
interest
let-
against cannabis federally being legalized, no doubt. Whether it's
Whether-
go ahead, Tal.
I was just going to say that they're probably allowing these bigger corporations to get set up first before they turn it on. And like Altria is probably lobbying them, saying, give us another 3 years so we could buy up more land in California and Mexico before you guys flick the switch, and then they'll be set up to take right over. But I don't know,
I mean, that's also a possibility, right? Like it could go and probably will go multiple ways.
A handful of companies own most of the stuff in Canada and California. I mean, the diversity is where the beauty is. The bulk market is probably not the share that most of us are going for. I think we're all going for more of that craft market, but I think it's going to be a little while until we see free trade between the U.S. and either Canada or Mexico, which will both be legalized for a while, I think, before we go federally legal here in the U.S.
Do we here think though that that tropical cannabis is bad? Like is tropical?
I think it's better. The American one was saying earlier that he wants the Hawaiian stuff, and I think Hawaiian is some of the best. I think Colombian, some of the stuff towards the equator is some of the best. Jamaican is very tropical and it's some of the best. And
We
I
are
think-
subtropical, for example.
Okay, well, I wanted to also say the one thing going back to the Mexican cultivation, they have a legacy that they can lean on with a potential terroir that they could sell, which is like Oaxacan gold. And they can sell certain brands that were popular from way back when that people are going to
Acapulco
want.
gold, yeah.
Acapulco gold. So these places that even if they don't necessarily have that genetic, they'll be known for it once it's legal. And like Dr. MJ was saying, they have skilled cultivators there. There's been people growing for several years. There's been little setups, people from here in the United States that have setups down there trying to get ready before it comes online. So it's just interesting to see that it's actually starting to happen, and I'm interested to see how it will affect the world market, because even if they don't work with the US, they might be able to work with other countries. Like Germany's open to it. Canada is also doing export, and I'm curious to see how it's going to affect the world market.
Let me say quickly that a lot of Americans and Canadians, well, not a lot, I don't know, but like Breeder Steve, they're going to the other countries to do it. So just because like it could still, you know what I'm saying, like people from America could go to other countries and start up businesses too, I think.
I have plans. Just saying, just throwing that out there.
I want to send 100 seeds to Breeder Steve, because then I could get a basically invitation. He said once a year he's going to have a living library.
Yeah.
He's doing the million seed search. So I'm going to try and get some seeds down to him. I need to figure out that address, because
You know what
that'd
else
be
is-
awesome to visit.
I was gonna mention-
I talked to Breeder Steve. I can probably just text him and find out the information for you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Listen, I was watching like back before any legal, well, not, it was probably California might have been medically legal, but watching the documentary, and they were in Colombia, and the chunks that I saw, the plants, the buds on the plants were just insane. They were like the biggest chunks of nugs I've ever seen, and it was just outside, you know what I mean? So it definitely is going to have an impact, I believe, these terroir and different locations.
Yeah, some people don't necessarily like need that indoor bag appeal or quality look, because some of the I got some Legend OG from Humboldt. Some I can't remember the name of the company, but it's sun grown and it's fantastic. It smokes really good, strong high, good terps. It came in a glass jar by the ounce, and in the legal market, granted this was my wife's discount, it was $200 for an ounce, which I've actually paid more for that in the traditional market from some people. So it's to be able to produce that and have it with all the taxes and regulation and everything, and be decent quality smoke coming through in the market here in California. I think it's a sign that whenever the regulations do move forward, if they're sensible, hopefully we'll be able to continue to have more and more good quality stuff available to the people. That goes through all the testing as well. So I think that it's just a matter of time, and all of us, sort of wherever you live, can have your own say in it. Join up with your normal if you're interested in doing that, because they have done a lot of the work that has gotten cannabis to where it is. For the positive, there's other groups out there that are making cannabis legal and trying to make it so just their interests get met. Only a few people will get licensed, and it'll make the rich richer kind of thing. And they might lobby to have no home grow. So it's important that you at least ensure that you have the right to do that wherever you're at.
I agree. Home grow is so important.
I think even if it's only a few plants at the beginning, like 6 or 12, like lobby for as many as you can, and for caregiving. I think that's a huge part.
12 per household member.
I think that's definitely a great start, but whatever you can do to get it into the place where it's that foot in the door, because usually once you start,
I live with 30 people, so
yeah, there you go. I like where you're going with it, Brandon.
I'm just kidding. I actually took my home grow down.
Is there any reason for that?
Yeah, so between all of the places that I have weed, I think I have fulfilled my obsessive compulsive cannabis disorder. I think
there is no limit, right?
I mean, there's no limit.
Personal limit for you, though.
So here's the thing.
Why do it in your closet when you could do it at a big ass place and then another big ass place?
The real reason is because I have that box, that shipping container, which is my playground. I bought that thing strictly for me to do whatever I want with it. R&D, breeding, pheno hunting, and that's my new home grow. It's the ultimate home grow. It is a shipping container on the property that I can go into and fuck around and do whatever I want in without anybody saying shit.
I'm jealous.
They're badass, man. Kyle Cushman has been doing that for a few years, where he has built out some shipping containers where they do multiple layers with LEDs, and it's really impressive the numbers that you can pull per square foot. And just for doing projects like you're talking about, if you just like tented up certain spots and had filters, you can actually do a few different breeding projects all in one space and make a lot of different things happen and play around. So I'm excited to see what you produce within there. Do you have a timeline on when you think it's going to be up and running? I saw you got the lights, and you got a lot
lights
of the
are built. My racks for the benches, they're double stacked. They are ordered and paid for. They should be there next week. My AC is there. It just needs to be installed. I need to put in the outlets into the little outlet holders and then just give it power. But it'll be ready within 2 weeks. I've already transplanted my seedlings. I started off with about 60 Black Lime Reserve. I popped some Gas times Mac V2, some Limarilla times Mac V2, and some other stuff that I got from My Name is Earl, who just has some phenomenal genetics. And I'm just going to start running those. Test out my box.
Speaking of testing genetics, I sent out a bunch of testers, and another person let me know that with their Velvet Punch F2, they had some nanners on one of the phenos. And I was just looking at their grow, and I kind of noticed that they were growing a fairly large plant in a small pot. And it's obviously the genetics fault. It should never hurt me under any conditions. But if you do have Velvet Punch, I'd be wary of keeping them in a small pot. Like they had it in a 1 gallon pot of soil that they amended with Build a Soil craft blend, and they're just giving water. So I would recommend a little bit larger root space if you're growing the Velvet Punch to make sure that they don't get stressed out and throw nanners, because they do have a tendency. That's like the third person who's found that they had issues.
Jack, I got to say that Velvet Punch, dude, is getting sticky and stinky. I had my little buddy come over. I'm like, dude, just like grab that leaf and, give it a little finger rub. Tell me what it smells like. He's like, that smells exactly like watermelon ranches, Jolly Ranchers, he said. The bigger one. And I swear the other one in the back, the low, shorter ones, like it's getting done quick too. It has a grape tinge, dude. Definitely has a little grape in it. One of them does. So I'm stoked, dude. Those plants are looking great.
It looks like Spartan Grown's been smoking on it for a little bit. I don't know if he might is smoking on that tonight, but he's got a few different phenos. I'm curious what your thoughts are after you've smoked on both of them for a little bit now.
Yeah, so I'm excited. So I have actually 3 phenos, but I don't have the third one even harvested. It's still flowering. And on that one, it was super impressive when it went in, but now it's just it just didn't do anything. It's just staying there. But it looks like the buds that it's forming, they are purple. So way more purple than either of the other 2 that I have. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But and that one smells so good though. That one that's in there, it smells really sweet. That's like the most sweet of the 3. Like it really smells like candy, like a grape, and the grape flavors coming through in there. Okay, so the 2 phenos that I've already taken down and smoked for a while, I got the 1 and the 2. And I'm getting feedback I'm spreading it around and trying to get feedback from a bunch of people. But so number 1 is the flavor is one of the things that makes it different than the 2. It's more like hashy flavor. It's like you can tell it's like the strains that are coated in trichomes, they tend to be hashy. That's what that one is. And then there's like a hint of grape behind the hashiness. That's the pheno also that was really super sticky, just like when Ty was saying he had one that was super sticky. I'm shaking my head because yeah, man, that number 1 is like super sticky. Even when I was trimming, it was dry, but it was still super sticky. Like you're constantly having to clean your fucking scissors. I mean, it was impressive sticky. And then so then the pheno 2, also on the pheno 1, the buds were like the best I can describe is like cookie structure, right? So your little nugs, but there's like the super frosty little dense nugs. So the other one was more not loose buds, but bigger buds. They weren't like balls or round shaped. They were more elongated, more fuzzy. I don't know how else to explain it with the way that the pistils were forming and stuff. Well, that one smoked more grape. You got more grape flavor in that one. The hashiness wasn't like the first dominant terp. It was more, you actually get some of the grape out of that one. And then you also get fuel. So it's grape and fuel. So it's pretty cool on that one. My personal opinion, as far as flavors go, if I have to pick the favorite flavor, it's that one. I like that flavor. But the highs are opposite of each other. So the high on number 1 is your classic indica kind of sedative kind of type high, which is the one that I tend to like the more those types of high. The high on the number 2 was crazy. I smoked it at around midnight and I was up till 2 a.m. So I mean, obviously it had the opposite effect on me. I don't know that it gave me energy, but it just kept me awake, aware. But I don't know that I was just laying on the couch. I wasn't really like dancing around or anything.
Yeah, it's like mentally stimulating, but not necessarily like you're gonna go run a lap or clean your house or something.
Yeah, exactly. Your mind is awake.
I've got definitely had that same experience with smoking a few different phenos. I've got 2 in week 8, probably mid week 8 of flower, and they're definitely, I would say one of them is more like that kind of triangle bud structure. It's got a little bit more hairiness to it, and that one's more purple than the other one, which is super small, like frosty nugs. It's more that cookie structure, and I'm a big fan of it. I've got a little bit of a skunkiness on it. I think that, I don't know, maybe Eagle was onto something when he's talking about buds being pollinated back in the day and being more skunky back then, because this is the skunkiest that any of the Velvet Punch I've grown has ever smelled. And it's got some of that grape, but it's definitely got skunky. Like I can smell it through my tent, through the carbon filter.
Is this an F3 or an F2?
This is the F2s that are pollinated with F3s. So I took the male F2 and then the 2 females that were F2 and pollinated completely, like fully. I took the male, which was in a like 2-gallon pot, and I would bring it into the room and just let it go crazy and pollinated everything top to bottom. So hopefully we'll have a bunch of seeds to give out. And it's always hard when there was intersex issues in the F2s. So I'm going to warn people, even with the F3, I'm only going to actually send them to the people that grew the F2s. So it'll be a small circle and they'll already sort of have the prior knowledge. And I'm excited to see what people find from it, because it's definitely changed. The F1 was purple way earlier. Like these didn't turn purple till like week 7, 8, 9, where my F1s turned purple week 3. And I grew them both in the winter. So I was seeing purple leaf day 20, 21 on the F1s, and the F2s, they didn't, that I made with those, day 20 purple plants ended up producing plants that were more like a mix of green and purple. Tao, you're showing off, I think, probably some of the Velvet Punch. I'm going to spotlight you and then remind you to unmute yourself. You're still muted, Tao.
Yes, okay. This is about one of the Velvet Punches. And you can see it's frosty. Yeah, I stuck my hand down there to take a leaf off, and my whole arm was just, you see the little purple in there?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to get that fade.
Yeah, and my arm was just covered with stickiness. Here's the other one. This is the one the kids said smelled like a watermelon rancher. It's definitely a taller plant. It's these two heads right here. And this one has like a different structure. You can see it's different. It has frost on the
that leaf. Yeah.
And so I have three, and this is the other one. This is a little shorter. Like I got two shorter ones, and that one's a little taller. So, but they're all covered and sticky. So I'm psyched.
It's so interesting. The F2s have a lot of variety, and that's what I was always told, but it's cool to see it now. I sent out 700 seeds. That's like 70 10 packs to a bunch of different people, and a lot of people have been growing them, and it's cool to see all the different results. And I'm really curious to see with
I still have the sawtooth one in veg. So, I still have that one too. So
you found out it was a female too, right?
I think I did. I don't remember now.
I think you told me that at one
Like,
point.
yeah, I upplanted it. It must be a girl. Yeah.
My one buddy, Smokestacks _ he had that sawtooth that finished with really tight. His were like kind of cookie buds, but it was like double the size of a typical cookie bud. It was like if you stacked two like golf balls on top of each other, and they were real dense. When he dropped the cola, it made like the loudest thunk I've ever heard a bud hit the table. And my barber, who I gave seeds to, he calls it the Skittles, even though it's not Skittles, but he said it tastes so much like Skittles that that's just, he can never remember the name, Velvet Punch. So I just think it's funny. He gave me a sample of it when I went and got my hair cut. And it's funny, I one time thought, all right, I'm going to have him not smoke before we cut my hair, and we'll wait till after. And it was like the worst haircut I ever got from him. So we always fucking get lit before now, because he's way better at cutting my hair when he's had a bowl or two or three. So
I could tell they're going to be hard like golf balls, man. The nugs are going to be, they're dense, dude. I could tell.
It's interesting because like it definitely doesn't have large buds, but when they're dense like that, it doesn't necessarily sacrifice a ton in yield, like as much as you might think when you actually go to like weigh it out at the end of the day. But sometimes they are lower yielders, so you do have to look for the that's going to best suit you and your needs. Like Spartan had an uplifting one and a sedating one, so that's something that would really bring a lot of different usage. So I think that's a nice thing about F2s. A lot of people dislike that about the breeding. There might be too much variety, but I'm curious to see. I'm just going to take an F3, F4, F5 and see how it changes. I'm making selections just sort of based on the best plants that I can find and the traits that I like the most. And I'm excited to see everybody else continue to grow them. And yeah, I don't want to hog the show up too much talking about the Velvet Punch, but it's been a fun little project, and thankful for the community that has joined in and helped out.
Yes, you are. You are part of that community that Dr. MJ Coco was talking about recently. We are all part of that community. That's why I try to get all that information out about pests as much as I can, because the more people know what a russet mite infestation looks like, the less people hopefully get them in the future, because people don't know what they're dealing with and potentially spread it.
Your information helped me with my barber that I was just mentioning. I taught him how to grow his first crop. He had spider mites, and I used predator mite to help him out, and it ended up saving his crop. And he hasn't had many issues since, because he's dialed in his situation with a little bit more IPM in mind. And I think it's been awesome to have your resources available to share with other people in the community, whether they've been growing for several years or brand new. I think it's extremely beneficial to know all that information that you put out there. And sometimes people don't come across it until they face it, and it might be too late at some points, but it's always good to brush up and know that information early. So have you dropped some more information on Dr. MJ's website? Because I know you guys were talking about some resources that were going to be coming online shortly last week, and I'm curious what articles are up there now for the people to go check out later tonight.
None at the moment. I want to make sure that I get all of my articles all ready and done, and a few other things first, and then it'll all be a big reveal, right?
Yes, yes, we got a couple of them that we've loaded, but we haven't published them yet. So once we get a few more, I think we'll do a little landing page and publish them. But yeah, we've nothing quite yet, still in motion.
Well, I'm happy that the wheels are turning on that process because you have a big community over there and a lot of growers getting into it, and having that community be exposed to that content is undoubtedly going to save people's gardens. And I think it's fascinating to learn all this different stuff. I'm an IPM nerd. We've had a few episodes where we dove deep into IPM rabbit holes and talked about tons of different IPM related things. So I know that the
I'm
chat
really
loves it
excited.
too.
We're really excited. We're ready to move on this. It's a lot of work publishing articles for the website. I mean, we have pretty high standards. So Matthew's got to, making him do some work to get these things ready. He's done a great job though. And I think everybody's going to really sort of like the content. He's got pictures and videos that go along with it and everything. So hopefully we will be able to get that done and something out. I don't want to put too much pressure on Matthew, but maybe
not at
this
all.
week, maybe next week, but it's coming.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well, and I agree with you. It gives me a warm feeling to know that, like, I can help as many people as I can, and I have already, whether professionally or privately.
It's I love as soon as it goes live, then it's there, for good. And like I've referenced so many of your things for the growers who DM me questions.
Yeah.
I just think there's this perfect Dr. MJ article that I could send to them that will help them understand. Like within literally 3 or 4 within the past day, within 24 hours, have talked to me about their EC going in and out and the target ranges not being within the appropriate ranges. And I sent them one of your articles, and it helped them out, and they got their plants, hopefully back towards good health. They have, in my opinion, the right information because I asked them a few questions about where they were at with their EC in and then their EC out, and figured out that there was either some issues or not necessarily the issues that they thought might be having. So
That's awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah, keep sending them over our way. And, there's stuff we really tried to branch out to cover more than just sort of the growing and cocoa articles. So like the plant training section, and now the Grow Light guide, and now Matthew's IPM guide. So yeah, head on over if you haven't been there for a while. Check us out.
I'm looking at those light articles because I might have mentioned earlier my brother is getting into growing soon, and personally I think that Mars SP 3000 that you reviewed, it just has such an amazing footprint for a 2x4. And if you're gonna go like do a 4x4 and a 2x4, that's like you buy 3 of them, it's like under $1,000, and or I think it might be 400 each or something like that. But to get set up, I mean,
one of those, that's what I run in my 2x4. And it's as much light as you could possibly want in a 2x4 tent, absolutely, and scalable. So if you go up to a 4x4, you just get another one. But yeah, a bunch of people use those. Those are great.
The beauty is his setup is going to be in a basement, so the CO2 tends to fall down to the basement in most homes, and so you have a little bit higher than ambient levels in houses that are set up like his, and so it'll be able to take advantage of all that light if he is able to properly dial in all the other things with the plants, which hopefully I'll be able to guide him through and help him out with. But yeah, definitely. I'm still impressed with
let
that
me
one.
just say this. If you got a bigger space, I just dropped a video yesterday that is sort of an amazing deal for a larger light. If anybody's looking for that, I'm not entirely sure how long that deal is going to be available, but it's less than $600 for a light that can light up a 5x5 grow space. I was sort of blown away by it. So if anybody's out there looking for a 5x5 light and hunting for a great deal, that is definitely something to check out. Did
Shane just review a similar light recently? He just updated his list from Migro.
I saw that Shane just recently did the SP 3000 that we were just talking about. Is that what you mean?
No, he did that, and then I agree that he also did the SP 3000, but he just recently, maybe yesterday, I can't remember the name of the brand. I'll try and pull it up quickly here on my Instagram, but he reviewed a light that was for a 5x5, and it was really long, and it had kind of like what he said, just like bare bones, but it had great components. I think it has Phillips and Osram, whites and reds.
No, I haven't seen that. They just dropped it yesterday.
Yeah, let me check.
I'll have to check that out. No, this is an LED bar array. It's a foldable LED bar array fixture. It's actually pretty nice. It passed all my tests. You see and that's the one I did was Medic Grow.
His is a Grow Light Science, but I think it's only a 300, so I could be misremembering. But I think for some reason he may have tested it in a 5x5, but that could have been for efficiency purposes. But he said it's one of the best prices for the value. I think it tested it like a 2.4. I gotta fast forward and check it out.
Check it out.
Yeah.
I don't know what that fixture is, or if it's a 5x5 fixture at 2.4, that's worth noting. I'm reviewing one of those too, but the one I'm reviewing right now has some interesting issues. I've had this fixture since January, and I should finally be able to finish the video this week, and that's the Geek Beast. I got the Geek Beast Plus. He did that one a while ago too, and I think his opinion was I don't know, efficiency wise it's great, but the distribution leaves a little bit to be desired.
So I was wrong. He tested it in a 5x2.5 with Mylar walls.
Okay.
It was only a 322 watt, but it's
That's
2.4.
That's a half a 5x5 tent.
Yeah, so two of them would be, but my light's probably too bright for it to show up, but at 2.40 ppf.
So how much was that one?
I don't know if he probably lists the price later in the video. I gotta fast forward.
That's what I was saying. You were saying it was about the same price as the one I'm talking about. But the one I reviewed lights up the entire 5x5 tent. I was playing with it for such a long time, trying to figure out like, why is this thing so cheap?
So I think it's this one is more expensive, I would imagine, per a 5x5. I think it's at $419 per fixture.
Per each. Yeah, that's more what you would expect. Most of the single fixtures that fill a 5x5 tent are about $1,000. And that's a pretty reasonable price to pay, actually.
And it's coming down, which is amazing. And they're
Yeah,
still
well-
amazing lights.
Will it be like a computer? Like it was $10,000 the first year, and now it's 10% of that.
Yeah, that's going to be the main
alright.
direction for the
There
next
you
couple
go.
of years.
Market
Efficiency
competition
is
will
kinda
drive
tapped out.
market as there's more brands and market competition, the price will drop down, and you'll see that the affordability will definitely be there. I mean, even with like what I'm doing in the container, because I'm using the 465 watt LED for a 4x4 area, and it's super efficient, and it's really not that expensive considering the energy usage that I would be if I were going to use high HID light. Plus I'm double stacking too, so I can use more in a smaller space without having to try to offset that additional heat,
Yeah.
I would from a
You got some of the nicest lights that are out there, I think, for that purpose too. Especially sticking a bunch of them in a container like that, just because they don't put off a lot of light, the photon techs.
Yeah.
Do those fold, or is it just a single 4 or 5, or how many bars is in that array?
It's a 5 bar, and they just attach to the it's really easy. There's a video on my YouTube on Bokashi Earthworks of the assembly. It's like takes me like 3 minutes to put one together, and it's literally just a T. You put the end caps on both sides, and then you put in the bars. It's
Can you
super easy.
Can you slant the two outside ones towards the middle if you wanted to?
No, they're set in position because you have to there's an adapter that plugs in to every bar. And so there's a space for each bar on it and it's that way for even light distribution as well.
They probably throw plenty to cover the space. I've seen some of the PPFD maps, and they're getting amazingly good at covering the space.
You can take those bars out though and run it with fewer than all of the bars, which is the cool thing on that fixture. So you can run only one bar. You can run only
they're
2
dimmable too. So if it's a lot of the times I think people would just dim them if they needed to, rather than try to dismount them. But they're
I'm just thinking sometimes the way I thought they might use the like only 1 or 2 bars is if you only had like seedlings you were starting and you had them only in one corner of the tent, what I mean? And you didn't want to have to light up, and that was your only light. At least it gives you an option.
It
lot
would
of
be-
people that have like big lights, when they start with little plants, they're using a ton of light they don't need because
Yeah, so it would be really cool to see like an adapter where you can just string the bar itself using the same driver. So you could put, a line of seedlings or over like a
Yeah.
bunch of trays,
that's actually something that they're coming out with soon, which is just single bars for exactly that kind of reason, filling in spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are all
Seedlings are
cool.
easy to fry with
This is the
modern
kind of
LEDs.
stuff that you're going to expect in the grow light industry. It's sort of innovative designs, better coverage areas. You're not going to get probably much more efficiency out of the diodes, at least not for a while. That seems to be where the industry is right now.
Yeah.
And prices are a little bit all over the place because the diode market got pretty hammered through COVID and the big supply or the big demand increase and led to supply shortages.
My understanding is too, there's also different, just like there's different shelves for alcohol, different tiers of quality. My understanding that there's different tiers of quality for the diodes themselves. And
Bins.
so it's harder to get the higher quality diodes and they're a little more pricey as well.
Spartan, I know you've got to
the
get.
two things that I'm seeing the sort of bargain brands do is switch to lower rated diodes on the one hand, or reduce the number of diodes that they use on the other. So those are other things you got to be sort of watching out for, because everybody is expecting the prices to keep going down. And sort of in the short term, we're right in the middle of it right now. There is a supply problem that almost every grow light company I talk to mentions, which is we can't get the good diodes in the numbers that we want them right now.
Spartan Grown, I know that you grow with a variety of different LEDs. I'm curious if you want to give your take on the different grow lights that you have, what your thoughts are about them, and then I know you got to give your final thoughts and shout outs before you get running to the Michigan Bros Grow Show.
Yeah, I just have a general opinion on lights. Is like I can grow, the dank under any fucking, we used to grow under street lights, right? So fuck, whatever. The shit we have now is way the fuck better. But when it goes to light, I just try to get the best damn light I can get, the best damn light on the market, maybe one step down, and that's my strategy. Because then I can buy it one time and usually lasts 4 to 5 damn years, and then you can do it again. What I love about the LEDs is you're not changing lights. There's no real maintenance. So for me,
that is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not changing
amazing.
light bulbs every 6 months is a blessing.
Oh, for sure.
And better for the environment, for sure.
But so what I went with is I've got mostly all HLGs. I love that it's an American company that I'm supporting. I love that I know the people in the company, so that helps. Before I knew those people, though, the customer service that I received from HLG was fucking out of this world. Like, they replaced shit for free, sometimes a whole light. So yeah, I just always had a good relationship with them, so I've kind of stuck with them. I also have a Science LED light, the Raging Kush. There's a version 2 out now. I have the original, and I'm a fan of that light too. It's more of a bar style, which kind of spreads the light a little bit wider, and I can get the plants closer, which is wonderful for me because I have restricted height, so that helps with the bar style. I can get my plants a little bit bigger. So yeah, those are just a couple of things I think about the lights. But other than that, it was awesome hanging with you guys. Sorry I was late. Chat, awesome hanging with you like always. And I mean, the biggest thing for me is it's great to talk about we had a great discussion today, by the way, and great to talk about like the whole world view really of cannabis. But in the end, just keep growing, guys. Just keep growing. That's the answer. Just keep fucking growing. Like even Brandon was saying, and I got to get behind it too, is that's the most important thing to protect is home grow rights.
Totally agree.
And if you have those rights, fucking exercise those rights. And as long as we keep growing this plant, they can fucking make whatever laws and rules they want. Just keep fucking growing the plants. That's it.
Yes.
Anyways,
I concur. Peace out, Spark.
See you guys.
Happy growing.
We'll see you next week.
See you later, dude.
Great seeing you as always.
I got to get going too because I've got a noisy bird that wants to get put to bed. So I'm going to sign off as well. It's always great to be here and talk to everybody. And I'll see you all next week. You can find me at the little icon here, Rust Brandon or Rust.Brandon on IG, and you can find links to all the other stuff in my bio.
Great having you, Brandon. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'll see you guys.
Peace
I
out,
want to give
Brandon.
a shout out to @SpartanGrown on Instagram. You can also email him at spartangrown@gmail.com. He's also one of the people who works at Mitten Canico over there in Michigan. They're putting out big numbers. I know that numbers aren't everything, but when you got beautiful flowers and just a lot of people speaking highly of their flower in that market, it's cool to see that he's one of our panel members doing big things over there in Michigan, both in his home grow with that Velvet Punch that he's growing up to those science LED lights, and in his commercial setting over there at Mitten Canico. They're doing just amazing things. And like you were saying, just keep growing. And that's one of the most important things. And I think one of the things that when we started this show, we wanted to spread to the people is how to grow their own and do it affordably. And sometimes we talk about other things like the world perspective, because that might impact their ability to grow or need to. If it's widely available for a really low cost, maybe less people will be incentivized. But if it's still difficult to get good quality, like I think it's going to be for many, many years, the quality at least we can produce in our own home, which is surprising to many people that haven't tried it before. We just got to keep on growing that good stuff ourselves and hold the commercial producers to a higher standard, because a lot of them aren't necessarily producing the quality that we would like to see. One thing I wanted to get back to earlier, we were talking about tropical growing, and Noah the Grower, I know you mentioned like in Hawaiian, or going Hawaii in general. And I was curious if you have any strains that you remember or enjoyed from Hawaii or your times there.
Yeah, but actually I had a very, very good Hawaiian haze plant that I grew from when I first started growing, and I had it up until about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was actually trying to get a clone from somebody, and I got lazy and put it in my room, and it just spider mited the whole room. But at the time I was lucky. I had so much overflow. I had it in a little tent by itself, but all my Hawaiian haze was in there, and I had to cut everything down just because I didn't want to find it. So I lost it. And actually my profile picture on Instagram, that's a big Hawaiian haze nug. I miss it so much, man. I really do.
Hopefully we can reconnect you with something like that. I know that there's a few different Hawaiian people in the community that are now here in California. Joshua LaCroix is one of them, and 808 Rooting Prospects is another. And I know that there's many other great cannabis members in the community from Hawaii or linked up with Hawaii. So hopefully someday you can get that. And the American one, what was the Hawaiian that struck your fancy? I always hear you reference that when you talk about good herb.
Yeah, well, I got like one of my first jobs. I was working at this restaurant, and this waitress chick was getting, she was getting it, and it would come around once a year, if that. I know I got it twice, and every time when I got it, she would try talking me out of it because she wanted it for herself, and I had to fight her a couple of times to make sure I got it. But it was like if it was fluorescent green. There were relatively little nugs, but they weren't crushed or anything, and it was just so sweet and smooth, and you just got like a pleasant high off it. It was just like perfect, and it tasted so good. And to this day, that was one of the better weeds I ever had in my entire existence.
Now, in your humble opinion, do you think it was imported from there, or was it some seed that somebody got and grew locally and took good care of and got to your hands?
I think it really came from Hawaii because it was different than everything else that was coming around. And yeah, it was definitely not indoor grown. I don't think it was indoor grown either. It wasn't. It didn't look like indoor grown. It looked like, it was like magical nugs. It was just amazing.
It sounds like something that I would love to try. I love the island of Hawaii. Just generally, it's beautiful. I've gotten to go twice, once for work and once for pleasure. And beautiful island, amazing people, and great food, as well as good cannabis. But I would love to go back someday. We all need to get a timeshare and go visit the beautiful island and hunt for do some within the U.S. strain hunters once travel is more readily available and accessible for most of the people.
Yeah, if the big book is real, then the Garden of Eden is hidden somewhere on a Hawaiian island. I'm convinced, even though I've never been there.
Even though it's a relatively new place as far as the history of Earth is concerned, because it was just volcanoes under the ocean for a little while until they
Still is.
Yeah, that's true, and it's continuing to expand.
Hawaii will eventually probably be. I think the oceans will rise over at some point. It's predicted in a long period in the future, but don't quote me on that.
In the short term, I think that they're still expanding because of some of the volcanic eruptions that turn into volcanic rock
the
and
lava's
glass.
going right into the water, right? Constantly, I've seen it, right? The lava's just spewing out into the water somewhere.
I don't think constantly, but certain ones are still active for sure. And the Big Island continues to grow. I think it's interesting that they have some of the most cattle on the Big Island. That was something that I was surprised to hear, is how much cattle Hawaii has. But when you have to import everything, it makes a lot of sense to do as much as you can locally. So it's definitely difficult to be on the island. It's a 5-hour flight from California, I believe. So it's not too close to much of anything as far as resources are concerned. So as much as they can do on the island, they have to do. But my cat over here is giving me the hook. It looks like we're coming up to about the 6 o'clock hour out here on the West Coast. She's telling me that my time on this podcast is over. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it around the panel and let everybody do their final thoughts and shout outs, starting with Kyle Breeder.
Hey, Jack, thanks for having me. Glad everybody's here. It's definitely getting late over here too on the East Coast. So if anybody's interested in what I'm doing, you can find me on social media at Predicative Breeding, not predictive. It's kind of a double-edged sword with that name, but it's Predicative Breeding on all social media platforms. I am growing out some skunk right now that I'm pretty excited about. Just try a radical different terpene profile, and more importantly, the effects. So I think, and I talk about it maybe some of us have before, is I believe the effects are radically different from flower in the 90s than flower that we're smoking today. So I'm pretty excited about that. If anybody's looking for feminized seeds, you can check out my website that I have. It's the letter P followed by breeding.com. And hope to see you guys next week, and everybody be safe.
We wish you the best of luck on that skunk. Hopefully find something roadkilly, because a lot of people are searching out there for that. And the skunk highs of the 90s are something that many people are still desperately seeking and trying to find. So if you find something like that and you could share it with the community, even in seed or clone form, that'd be something that would be highly appreciated by most people, I'd imagine. So next, I want to pass it over to the American one, because I don't want to forget you this week.
No worries. Thanks, Jack. Everyone on the panel is excellent, chatting it up. Always interesting, and always learn something. Chat was great. Peace chat. And everybody have a great week. I'm the American one on YouTube, and the American one _with_8 Keens on the IG. If you search the American one and the little guy with the American top hat pops up, that's most likely me. So have a great one, everyone.
You too, the American one. Thank you so much. It was great having you as always. And I want to pass it next to Noah the Grower.
Yeah, I had a great time hanging out with everybody, and I'll see everybody next week. I'm Noah the Grower on Instagram with 2 E's. If you want to come follow me and check it out, feel welcome to do so. And I'll see everybody next week.
Thank you again for joining us, Noah the Grower. Always happy to have you, and appreciate your input. Next up, Dr. MJ.
Hey guys, this is a fun show. I sorry if I fall down the rabbit hole sometimes and start talking about totally off-topic things, but I have fun doing that.
Well connected.
We talked about some on-topic things though too today. I want to remind everybody about the Spring Autoflower Challenge. Sign up now, cocoforcannabis.com/challenge. We'll have a bunch of great giveaways, a bunch of cool groups, and another great challenge starting on April 20th, 420. Right now, we also have this strain review giveaway going on with the Grower's Choice ROI E720 as the prize this month, which is like a big, beautiful light. All you got to do is write a strain review to get a lottery number to enter that. And if you're interested in lighting, or if you're looking for a light, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, and come on over and visit us at cocoforcannabis.com. Appreciate all my panelists, appreciate everybody in chat. and grow with love.
Thank you so much, as always, for joining us, Dr. MJ. It's a pleasure to have you, and appreciate all you do for the community, the light giveaways and the knowledge that you're spreading. It's really amazing and helping a lot of people, and that impact should not go unnoticed or unacknowledged. So just big thank you to you and all that you do and put out there for the people.
It's nice how context dependent your advice is.
Thanks, guys.
Specifics really help, definitely. And speaking of specifics, a person who is very good with them, Matthew Gates, I'd like to give you the chance to give your final thoughts and shout out.
I really enjoyed the topics. I always say this, but I particularly enjoyed what Dr. MJ Coco was talking about, and Brandon and Spartan Grown and Tao and everyone here. But we got to talk about some heady sort of international global perspectives that, of course, influence us at the sort of like, ground scale, if you want to call it that, and also the commercial scale. And there's a dynamic and ecological effect. And I was even thinking about how, as international trade with cannabis maybe solidifies or starts, we might see some pest problems and a lot more of them. And we already have some huge issues that aren't going away anytime soon and getting worse and worse. So if you want to learn more about B. curlytop virus or hop latent viroid or hemp russet mite, or the various powdery mildews that infest cannabis, then you should check out my Zenthanol YouTube channel. You should also talk with me if you are in need of help with that on a professional level. I am a consultant and I work in the agricultural industry and especially cannabis. And you can also find my content on Instagram and Twitter at SyncAngel.
Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. You add so much valuable content to this panel and just always give a great perspective when it comes to IPM and historical things and cannabis perspectives and everything. You're a very well-rounded individual who adds so much to this panel. I can't understate how much we appreciate you and all the help that you've given out to the community. And want to remind the people, if you have gotten some free consulting from Matthew, if he's helped you out in some way, he does have a tip jar. So if you have a extra little here or there, it helps produce content. As a content producer myself, I know any little bit, $1, $2 or whatever helps. So not to like say that you need to, it's always all of my content, at least online, is going to be free. So anything is appreciated for those who want to give that a little bit of help back, because he can literally sometimes, in some cases, save your garden. And I think paying it forward and helping out the person who helped you is a good way to live. I think that karma goes around and you build good relationships with those people, and it can definitely help you in the long road. So shout out to Matthew and all that you do. And thank you again so much for joining us. I guess I have finally gotten around to myself. You can find me at Jack Greenstock. I'll finally tilt it up. I'm done playing with my cat over here for a second. But yeah, you can find me at Jack Greenstock. I'm not going to try and hide myself so you can see the logo, but I'm on Instagram as well as Cannabis under that same name. And I'm also on Twitter, Jack_Greenstock. And if you would like to order the second edition of 50 Strains of Green, I just got it finished with the formatting, and I did all the revisions and fixing of the typos and things like that. So the second edition is going to be printing hopefully by April 20th is the goal. So trying to make that happen. I've got a big list of people already, and I'll be reaching back out to them for the addresses and payment in a little bit. But as far as that is concerned, I've got a really good relationship now with a local printer, and just going to get the proof copy to make sure it's the standard and quality that I am hoping for. And just thank you so much to everyone for all the support and pre-orders who've already made them, and the people who got the first edition. Thank you so much for making it possible and allowing another book, 50 Strains of Purple, to be written. So look forward to that in the future. Thank you all so much for coming. Grow with love. See you all next week.
Grow with love.